The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
3 designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
All right, welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
And I'm Charlie McCarran.
And today we are continuing our Roll and Write series with 3 Sisters by Ben Pitchback and Matt Riddle. So this game is a little bit different, but has some similarities to what we've already covered with That's
Not
So
Clever.
That's pretty clever.
That's pretty clever.
pretty clever.
I keep wanting to call
Sorry.
it That's So Clever.
Yep.
I think it's because the German is like ganz schön clever, and so it's just like, yeah that's so clever.
Yeah.
But in 3 Sisters, you're basically managing your little like hobby farm. You've got a garden area. You've got different like flowers and different areas that you can kind of invest your dice into when they're rolled. A lot of it is very specific, so I'm going to kind of gloss over a lot of it. And if you're really curious about it, definitely check it out. It's definitely got a lot of big combo things going on. So if you like games that have a lot of combos where you're like, oh, hey, I got an extra action. Oh, hey, I get to do this now. Oh, this is a great game for you. It gets a little overwhelming at some points, but we'll get into it. So your main focus is on the garden, and when you roll the dice, you're going to roll a number of dice based on the number of players. You're going to select, or you're going to organize them in order around a little rondelle that they have that's on a little tile. And then each little action on the rondelle joins with the die that's rolled. So you're going to get to do the die that's rolled as a garden action in one of the 6 zones. In addition to that, you get to do the bonus rondelle action. And so you're kind of choosing both where you're going to be planting, or where you're going to be watering, whatever it's going to be, and what you're going to be doing in addition to that. There's a lot of different little nitpicky stuff here. So I'm not going to go into every little instance and every circumstance because that would just take way too long. But you do have the garden, which is your primary focus for a lot of what you're working with. Then you also have things like perennials, where you have flowers that are growing. You have an apiary where you have different beehives that can do different things and give you different benefits. You have a fruit area that has fruit trees and bushes. And then you also have your shed. The fun thing about this is that your shed is going to be able to give you little passive bonuses to different things involving fruits or the apiary or the perennials, or maybe even the garden. Or it might just give you straight points. Then you're also going to have the fruit, which harvests in different ways. And so you can kind of plan like, okay, well, this fruit's going to give me more points. This one's going to give me some more goods. And that's kind of a funky thing here is that we have goods and victory points. Goods is kind of a wealth currency that you build up over time.
It gives you more actions.
It gives you more actions. It allows you to do more during one of the special rondelle actions called Farmer's Market. It makes those better.
Well, I mean, that also effectively translates into more actions.
Right.
Goods are basically just overall, they give you more things.
More things you can do.
Yeah.
When they trigger things. So this is really a game about finding that little niche that makes your engine, so to speak, kick off better and get you more actions, more to do, scoring you more points in the end. I tried a new strategy this time when I was teaching it and did very poorly. But, that's what's fun is that you have these different avenues and different roads you can take that will maybe vary a little bit, too, with the player counts. So that's a kind of fun situation. Overall, there's one more step. You have 8 rounds total every time, and you get to do a joint action with all of the players at the end of each round based on which round it is. So round 1, you can all do a shed action together. Round 2, it's going to rain, and all of your plants are going to grow in the garden. And so, you're able to kind of plan around that a little bit and kind of set yourself up, which is great being able to make yourself feel clever. It's a very good, I think, indicator of the genre when you have things that you can feel smart about and good about. For instance, when you're starting out in the garden, there's 3 different plants. If you don't know the 3 Sisters, it's squash, corn, and beans. And so in this, they have corn, beans, and then pumpkins surround your garden, protecting it from weeds and things and helping the perennials grow.
And I guess just a little bit of background in general on the concept of polyculture as opposed to monoculture, where the 3 different plants support each other as opposed to just like a huge field of just corn,
Right.
or just beans,
or wheat.
yeah, where they're not benefiting each other, and so you
Right.
have to pump them full of fertilizers and stuff. And
Right. So it's a more
pesticides.
natural way of kind of helping them thrive together.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it's.
Which
Well, and funny because in the last episode I had said that's pretty clever. Oh, that game, there maybe could be a theme with it, but it's just abstract. This one they went all in on the theme.
yeah,
and
you
these-
really feel that
art. Yeah, the
Yeah.
art makes it feel like each of these areas is unique, and the way planting works. Like if this was an abstract game, it would take a lot of mental rules to
teach
teach people like, oh no, wait, you have to put one there first, and then you can add to it.
why do I only increase them by one during this action, then when I
Exactly.
do this other action, it's like, you're
'cause
watering
it's
a lawn.
planting.
If it were an abstract game, it would not work the way that it does. I mean,
Right.
It's
It
not.
couldn't.
Yeah, it's not a question of you have the mechanics and look, this works with the gardening theme. It's it's a game about gardening, so this is how it works.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it does definitely feel theme first in that way, which I think is really good when you can
Yeah.
really get the theme from the mechanics.
Yeah.
Like they feel compatible and
Yeah.
in sync with each other.
Well, and it was good for me to play this game too because I'm working on a game that has a sort of similar like planting and growing when it rains mechanic, and it is like this nice thing in nature that lends itself to a good mechanic because it's the toss up of, well, do I plant and build up my basically like your stock,
Your base,
your
yeah.
stocks in this. I was thinking of my game almost as like stock market-y because
Maybe a little bit Bitcoin.
do I plant and then get the passive rewards
Right.
from a large crop, or do I just start
Over a long
trying
period
to?
of time.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
one lets you water right away.
Right.
Actually,
Yes.
every turn you could
Yeah,
water.
Well, and I think the interesting thing is for the pumpkins at least, the earlier you get those pumpkins out, the better, because like the pumpkins give you access to goods and access to perennials, which are one of the various tracks. But both of these things just translate into extra actions. So if you get those going in the early game, that can pay off over the course of the game. But the thing is, if you just plant them and wait, you will eventually get them
Right.
at a point where they will maybe be a little bit less valuable, which
Yeah.
creates this really interesting tension between gaining things passively, but in the very late game after
Right.
they might be the most useful, versus actively rushing them to get them early, even if it's maybe, even if you could get them by waiting, just working really hard to get them now, which I think is probably my takeaway. I'm just going to go a little bit early here. I think that is a really interesting tension between like just waiting for something without having to do anything, but getting it after you need it, versus like really trying to get it.
Rushing in. And
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't feel great if you've filled out your zone and then it rains and it's like, well, that wasted water.
Yeah.
It could have.
Right.
Which,
But that's
that
why it's
wasted
a good-
water. That's a really interesting, also
That-
environmental thing to think
Yeah.
about in the game.
Yeah.
It's like, interesting.
But I think that's applicable to more than just this type of game. Finding sort of pairings of risk and reward are in many cases a way that you can make really interesting games. And this is a particular type of risk reward that I think could be used in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, so I joked about it earlier, but the time value of money is a real term in like finance and accounting. So you're like trying to figure out how much a dollar will be worth 10 years from now, and what is the value of that, and is that worth this amount that someone wants to pay for it now, or will this dollar be worth more in the future in today's dollars? So like it's a very nerdy thing, but this actually kind of plays with that, as Ananda's saying, where like, okay, starting off getting a lot of goods early up front gives you access to more things when you're doing farmers markets and getting bonus actions, which can get you access to more things earlier on. So like that actually can help drive your decision and help you figure out where you want to go. And the actions also aren't promised because you're rolling dice and they're going on this kind of rondel mechanism. So you don't know what you'll have access to. So it kind of helps you kind of you can't perfectly plan your actions, which is great, and which is perfect for a roll and write.
Yeah. I guess my takeaway, we kind of talked about, Trevor alluded to this feeling of overwhelm. Like there's so much you can do on your board, and like,
and then that gets me in
maybe
action.
The first time I really felt lost. Like, wait, what was I even doing with this again? And there's like at least 3 to 5 things in your head every time.
Yeah.
But I will say that the positive side of that is it does really, for this like smallish board, it does really feel like you have a lot of options and
a lot of choice.
In particular, the shed. Normally in games you don't see like every possible special action you could do for the game or whatever.
Right.
So it was overwhelming the first play, but now I can see how having like there's something like 15 different places that you can pursue right from the start of the game. So you really pick your path.
Well, and even the first joint action you all take at the end of the round is a shed action.
Oh, right.
Which is like, it's encouraging you to like look at that board and see, hey, what do you want to do with your garden?
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
And that's just to jump on that is also another takeaway for me is like...
Taking all the takeaways,
Yeah,
man.
well, there's...
Wow, Charlie.
Just the piece about the extra actions and just like giving you lots of stuff that... like these joint actions, it adds to this feeling of so much stuff to do. But I don't know. Yeah, it's cool to see that design philosophy play out versus like I'm maybe a little more efficient usually with like, oh no, you do 1 or 2 things on your turn. Right?
Yeah, even more than that's pretty clever. This game really, really leans on those combos.
Yeah.
Actually, it's. Might be worth talking just for a moment about in that's pretty clever. One thing that is a little bit like that is that in this game you can also interfere with other people by taking the dice that they want, because when you roll the dice, you put them on the rondelle, and then when you take an action, you take that die.
Right.
And there were at least 2 times during our game where one of you took a die that I wanted,
and only one of those times was intentional, and that was me. I definitely took a die that I knew Ananda would want.
Yes.
And I did benefit from it, but he would have benefited a lot more from it than me.
Yeah, so much like the previous game that we looked at, this is a game where there is interaction in that you can take stuff that other players want.
Absolutely. And also with this one, I think there's more capacity for simultaneous play.
Yes.
Which is great, but also a little less... I don't know if it's less interaction. I feel like in... That's pretty clever. You are able to manipulate a little bit more what people have access to and what they use.
Yeah.
This one you're a little bit more limited. Like you take 1 die out. For us, it was 5. Right. That's a 3-player game. And then you also all take the last action. That's the lowest number. So you also get like a special benefit. So you're kind of planning like, okay, do I want... The last player actually has a head up where they can like choose whatever one gets.
Yeah, they know what the last action is going to be.
Yeah, which I didn't actually play with until I just realized that.
Yeah.
That actually that reminds me a little bit, Charlie. One of your games, the one with the cards, I think. Just that thing of whatever is left over affects like how players score or what they get to do. I think you had that in
Surplus of Sloths.
Is that what it's called now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surplus of Sloths.
Look for it soon.
You've heard it here
Coming
first,
out
folks.
Through Weird Giraffe Games.
But yeah, that is often a cool mechanic, but it is also one that gives the last player a lot of power. But on the other hand, the last player has the fewest choices, so maybe that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that can kind of inherently balance out a bit too. So just to make sure I get to my takeaway, I really love the shed in this game. In this playthrough, I did not focus on it as much, and it left me wanting to focus on the shed more. And so it's really interesting because you are able to kind of create it's the engine build, right? That's what's helping you build your engine, what you get little benefits for when you do this or that. And once you get more familiar with it, you're kind of wanting to like take that extra crunch into it and see like, oh, maybe I get this so I can see what I get every time, you know. And Ananda picked up really quickly on 2 of the combos that really clicked well together, and I wanted to do that, but I'd already done that before, so I really wanted to play with all these new things. There's a lot to play with. Yeah, and so I really like the idea of being able to kind of customize your mat when everyone's working on the same thing, and you are finding combos for yourself. I do wish, however, that there's some way to combo off of other people in a way, just to create a little bit more of that interaction, paying attention to the other players. But
Yeah, I really didn't look at your guys'
yeah,
boards
this
other
game
than-
specifically would have a hard time with that because you have so much you're paying attention to on your boards.
Yeah.
But like in another game, maybe that's a little bit lighter, a little bit less, you know, bonus action, bonus action, bonus action.
Yeah.
Then you can actually like, oh, if they do this, I get to do that too.
Yeah.
And just having that little bit of almost probability farming in a way.
Yeah, maybe if you tuned into our previous episodes, we may be working on something garden probability farming related. But yeah, it's funny because this game felt like work sometimes, like just tracking everything.
Raining
but,
was a
maybe
chore.
it kind of, like, you know, it's good for this theme. Like, this takes work to have this garden. And
to grow the
halfway through,
things.
I was thinking about, like, man, it's great to have this garden just growing by itself, but
Right.
also I have to remember that I planted this thing over here.
Yeah. Yeah, I do love the corn. I counted earlier, and I think you can get 72 points with corn on its own if you just focused on all of the corn plots. I don't know if that's possible. It probably is. But you'd really have to focus on
if
planting.
you neglect the shed.
But if you'd have to maybe neglect the fruit or maybe the perennials. But all of those give you things to help you do other things, to help you do stuff, and maybe win. But sometimes you're just doing stuff. And I don't know, for me it scratches that itch of like the Harvest Moon or the farming game simulators where you can just kind of, I'm going to work on these plants for a while. And you're just like, I'm marking off boxes. Do. Oh, I get another action. Great.
Yeah.
One really nice thing about it is that a lot of the boxes that you mark off, in fact, possibly most of the things you mark off, are not worth any points.
Yeah.
They just, when you mark them off, they give you an immediate action, which you resolve. And you care a lot about these. I mean, like that was fun, marking off one thing and then marking off another thing. But I like that that they don't take up extra time at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Like you can just look at the ribbons at the end of the game and ignore everything else, even though everything else is what you were focusing on.
Right.
And I guess that's pretty clever. Had a little bit of that too. In that you did care a lot about getting those bonus things checked off, but I feel like I was, it was just even more so here. Like even more so, you cut out a lot of the stuff you had to think about during the game during scoring,
right?
Which really made scoring feel pretty nice.
I will say there is more adding in this one. Then that's pretty clever because you have to actually add up every individual 3-point, 1-point, 2-point ribbon. But like, it's also on paper that you can write on, and it's not that big of a deal, you know?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed the scoring of this game more than, well, I guess I also won this game, but
but wait,
even though the score,
I forgot to count my beans.
You forgot your beans.
I forgot to water my beans. 4 points.
Oh my God,
no.
Charlie definitely
Asterisk.
beat me.
No, just kidding. There's
which the beans I think are still pretty funny because they're all only worth 1 point, and they really just need to be planted before the last rain falls because the rainfall will grow all of the beans.
Yeah.
You know what it is about this? I think I just realized. The points here are all written on the sheet.
Yeah.
Whereas that's pretty clever. A lot of the points, well, the ones that are most annoying to add, you're putting your own numbers.
Sure.
And because these are on the sheet, it is possible to arrange that, like especially in the garden.
Yeah.
Because you can just multiply.
Yeah, 3 times however many corns you got.
Yeah.
Great.
Being able to control the amount of points that things are worth makes the addition at the end a lot easier.
For sure, yeah.
As opposed to letting people put down whatever numbers they want.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I love that there are also still some of those variable points you can get to. Like the tulip is a perennial that if you get to the top, you get a victory point per fruit that you have harvested. You can also get the carving kit and the shed, which it gives you basically a longest road bonus for pumpkins. So most pumpkins in a consecutive row, basically, or in a line, but it's in a circle. It's kind of a great little thing to be able to like weigh that risk and see if you want to go for that or not, if you'll be able to get enough points in there. But it's not like so much more math that you're going to get bogged down at the end. It's just a couple points that do that. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like all my blackberries are worth 2 victory points, all apples are worth 3. Like it really is consistent, which is nice.
Yeah. And I think this game is an example of like how roll and writes can get away with actually quite a bit complexity going on.
Yeah.
And versus if we were like tracking everything with components
and
not marking.
Yeah.
I guess you could have tracks and going up tracks, but like using cubes on places and I don't know. Yeah, it's you can be a lot more efficient with just like marking a little box, and it's kind of satisfying for people.
Right. Yeah. And if you make a mistake, you can erase it, which is great.
Yeah.
Unless you're working with a pen, which the first 2 times I played, people did use pens.
Oof. Yeah, no,
And they had to scribble it out like, wait, I didn't do that. Wait, oh, no, now... shoot.
Yep.
So ultimately, this game is really, really good at creating those bonus action combos and getting you to get like kind of into the weeds a little bit because you'll be doing something. Then you're like, okay, now I got a bonus action. Into the weeds. You'll be doing something and then it's like, oh, I got a bonus action from that. Well, I don't want to forget what I was doing and I don't want to forget about the bonus action, so I'll circle the bonus action maybe and I'll go back to what I was doing. But sometimes you really want to do that bonus action because you're waiting for it. And it's like, oh, I really want to do that thing with the thing. And then you go on a whole tangent and forget that you're ever actually going through your garden and figuring out what you were doing. So that is the only downside. But ultimately, like I think it's a great little combo roll and write.
Yeah. Cool. With that, join us next time for our roll and write, technically a flip and write.
Shh.
Cartographers.
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.